Now I would like to welcome Gerhard Veldsman from Roy Hill. Welcome, Gerhard. Gerhard is just the second person to hold the Chief Executive Officer role at Roy Hill, succeeding Barry Fitzgerald in July 2021. Gerhard initially joined Roy Hill as Chief Operating Officer in August 2019. He has extensive mining industry experience spanning various commodities and operations in Australia and South Africa, including more than a decade in iron ore. Gerhard has managed mine, port and rail operations in the Pilbara, overseen major capital projects and led organisation-wide strategic planning and implementation. He previously held senior management positions at Fortescue Metals Group, BHP and Biz Industries.
Thank you very much. As you've heard, only the second CEO, and my name's not Barry. Barry is probably the first time in the last 10 years he's actually not presenting. And over the last 10 years, you would have heard Barry talking first of all about a study, and then later on about financing that study, then delivering a project and ramping it up, leading to Roy Hill being Digger of the Year. It's a great privilege for me to be here today and talk to you a little bit more about just some of the broader industry challenges we see in Roy Hill. So I'm not going to talk very much about Roy Hill's growth story, but I'm very much going to focus on what we as an industry and what Roy Hill see we as an industry are facing over the next 2 years. It'd be very un-Australian of me not to start with a slide like this. Over the last 2 years, it took a pandemic for the rest of Australia to actually realise the importance of mining. Mining makes more than 10% of our national GDP and by far makes us the biggest economic contributor. Just some stats. The CME recently highlighted the fact that the WA resource companies contribute more than $83 billion to the Australian economy. That includes $10 billion in wages, $18 billion in federal taxes, and almost $8 billion in taxes to the Western Australian government. We employ more than 1.1 million people directly or indirectly. And there are many more benefits than just that. Just think about all of the money that goes into research, all of the money that goes into the arts because of the success of the resources sector. It took a pandemic for Australia to realise that when mining does well, Australia does well. And every single one of us in this room should feel very, very proud of what the mining sector has been doing over the last 30 years, but specifically over the last 2 years as we've gone through this pandemic. As I said, I'm going to very much focus on sort of 3 key themes. And these are 3 of the themes that we in Roy Hill and in the broader Hancock Group believe is going to be some of the major challenges for us over the next 2 years. First of all, if we think COVID is gone and we've managed to actually get rid of it, the last month was a massive wake-up call. As we've seen, we're going to have to learn how to live with it. We're going to have to plot our way out of it. And we're going to actually, especially over the next 12 months, have to actually make some tough decisions. But more on that later. The next bit is workforce. Suddenly, no international labour coming in, no skilled labour from overseas coming in, very limited movement of labour across Australia. Not only has resulted in a shortage of labour, but also on a lot of stress on our workforce. People are stranded because of lockdowns, can't go home, families are over east, and we as an industry needed to start to think about what more we're going to do. Now, we may be able to solve how we deal with COVID, put things in place. We may be able to train a workforce. But one of the biggest risks we're facing is if we don't get a cultural change around how industry and government work together to streamline approvals, we're really going to miss this boat. Prices for iron ore, gold and commodities aren't going to stay up. If you've been in the commodities game long enough, like most of you, you will know it's a cyclical cycle. Prices go up, prices go down. And when it's up, we need to make hay while the sun is shining. So let's start with COVID. By now, I'm sure every single one of you have contingency plans how to deal with an outbreak. You actually have all sorts of controls embedded. And as an industry, we should feel very proud. We've managed to keep it out of the industry. We've managed to actually keep people employed. We've managed to keep our people healthy, the communities in which we operate healthy. And through that, we've managed to generate a massive surplus in WA, one of the only economies in the world to actually have had a surplus over the last 12 months. But as I said, COVID's not gone. We see what's happening in New South Wales, now also in Queensland. We need to start to plot a way out of this. It was great to see that the federal government has put a plan forward. Personally, I would have liked a few more dates to that plan because, as most of us as miners know, that a plan without dates is just a wish list. So it's great to see that there's a broad framework, but it's really important we start to actually see some target dates when we're actually going to meet those 4 stages. Vaccination is our way out of this, and us as an industry working with government how to actually push vaccinations to become easier and more broader and make vaccinations available not just to our industry but also to school teachers and to the broader populations is really, really important. If we want to get our economy to open up, if we don't want to fall behind the rest of the world, we're going to have to look at how do we actually get people vaccinated, how do we get over 80% vaccinations so that we can move freely, not just within Australia but also internationally. In the meantime, we're going to have to look at ways to actually bring people or improve mobility across Australia and also some mobility within international into Australia. So start to think about clearing hubs. How do we actually get people in? How do we test them? And then make sure that we can safely work within Australia. Talking to a CEO in Germany the other day, they actually test school kids every morning before they go to school for COVID. The test takes 10 minutes. Within 10 minutes, they get a result. If you want to go to a beer garden in Germany, you actually have to have had a COVID test, or you actually would have had to actually have both vaccines. We're going to have to start to think about implementing some of those in Australia, and industry is going to have to work with government to make it happen. If we don't do that, we will not get the resources we need to actually progress a lot of these projects we all talk about. Which takes me to my next slide. We've all seen all of these headlines in the newspapers. We've all started seeing, especially if you're doing projects, the labour prices coming in for projects. We've all started seeing, when you do operational shutdowns, how difficult it is to get a workforce. Especially on projects and shutdowns. In Australia, we've always had a workforce that moved between the East Coast and the West Coast, depending on where the projects are, depending where big shutdowns are. Now, with COVID, that's become very difficult. You actually can't get any labour in from the eastern states at the moment, even for shutdowns. So we had to start to think differently around how do we solve this problem. And what I'll do, I'll just share some of the things we're doing in Roy Hill to actually deal with this problem. We sort of focus it in 3 key areas. The one is around new to mining program. Now, we're not the biggest player, but we do think we're actually very agile. We can come up with innovative solutions. Our new to mining program brings people into the workforce that's never actually worked in mining. We train them up how to actually drive trucks. Now, you may say, wait a bit, aren't you automating your truck fleet? Absolutely. We've already got 8 autonomous trucks running around on site. And within the next 2 years, we'll have another 74 converted. So why we bring people in to drive trucks? It's a great way to get people into the mining sector. We bring them in, we teach them a skill, we get to look at them, we look at their values, their behaviours, is it aligned with us? And then we retrain them and redevelop them to actually go and work in other parts of our business. Over the last year, we've retrained and redeployed over 100 people out of our truck drivers to go and work in our plants, in our process plant, in our villages, and with some of our contract partners. So that focus on capability, making sure people's values align, making sure they're capable, and providing them on-the-job training has been very successful. Of the people coming into the program, more than 50% of them staying with us, and a big proportion of the other 50% are actually working for our contract partners. The second part of our strategy is to actually really look at synergies, try and find win-win solutions. Two of the best examples I can mention is the work we're doing with the Defence Force. If you think about the Defence Force, it's people that's highly disciplined, it's people that's highly trained, and if we can find pathways for them at the end of their defence career to actually move into mining, that's a real win-win for both industries. So working very closely with the Defence Force, giving them opportunities to come and work for us has been very successful. Another partnership we've recently started is with Qantas. If you think about it, they've got a bunch of very valuable assets, which is their international pilots. They do need those pilots to go back flying planes when international borders open up. But they don't have jobs for them at the moment. A lot of those pilots aren't job keeper. Now, we need more labour now, locally in Australia, until borders open up. So by training them to actually come to work for us, we're actually taking somebody off JobKeeper and we're giving them a real job, and we actually allow them, once their career opens back up, once international borders open back up, to go back flying planes. A real win-win solution. So the first pilot that started this, he's finished his first 2 weeks of driving trucks, you think about the way about driving trucks, flying planes, quite different. It's actually not. If you're an international pilot, you're used to 12-hour shifts. A big Hitachi 300-ton truck, fully loaded, weighs basically the same as a 380 plane. So a lot of those things are similar. They're used to working in very safe environments. And we see a real win-win also with the culture that they actually bring into our workforce. Other things we're doing is to actually look at how do we reward our partners, not just share our wealth that we generate just with our employees, but also with our partners. So when we look at for instance, some of our shutdown contractors, we've got a scheme in place where we actually reward them for continuously coming back to our shutdowns, and that's been very, very successful. The second part is partnering with our future workforce. If we start to think about it, it was actually quite shocking for us when we start to realise that a lot of our teachers don't know a lot about the mining industry. And if you think about who's giving your children the advice of what they need to go and do next, what's the careers that's there for them, it's the teachers teaching them. But yet, as an industry, we're not doing a lot to actually educate our teachers around what a wonderful industry the mining industry is. So starting this year, Roy Hill will actually start to work with education departments to actually take final year teaching students up to our mine, up to our port and rail, to our rock, to actually show them what the mining industry is about, get them to experience it, so that when they go and teach our kids, that they can actually talk to them about what mining is. Because up to now, all they've known about mining is what's in the social media and what they read in newspapers. We're focusing on younger kids, that year 5, year 6 students. We bring them into our workforce. We've got a rock ed training centre in our offices here in Perth, where we actually show them the fun of mining, get them to control some of our drill rigs on site, get them to play in the simulators, talk to our operators in the rock, get to understand what it is to be a mining engineer, get to understand that mining is so much more than just digging a hole, and get them excited about the future that mining can be. Up to that stage, all they knew about mining is what they learned in Minecraft. Other areas we're now focusing on is that year 11 students. We recently, with the support of the CME, had some year 11 students up on site. And it was actually really interesting. Most of them were females. At a time when the newspapers were reporting how bad the mining industry is for our female employees. And absolutely, the newspapers needs to hold up the mirror. But it was really great to show to these girls just what we're doing in the camps, what are we doing on our sites to make sure that people aren't just physical safe, but psychological safe, and how they can actually reach their full potential. The letters we got back after that visit really made you realize how important these things are. How important it is to actually show our younger generation, our future employees, what mining can be and what a great career mining is. So I will highly encourage you, if you want to get involved, contact us, and let's see as an industry what we can do to actually get our educators and our future educators more involved in mining so that they can actually tell our kids what a great industry this is to work in. So all that is good. It's good to actually attract the right people. It's good to actually bring more people into the industry. But it's really important we create a culture where they actually want to stay in the industry. We focus very much on the physical and the mental health. If one thing COVID has brought forward is the importance of looking at the mental health, making it okay for people to say, listen, I'm struggling at the moment. Through the CME, we're rolling out a peer support program where it's the easiest way to explain it, it's safety reps for mental health, where we have people on site, peers that can actually, if you have a tough day, you can actually go and have a chat and they can actually provide support. We want to maintain a culture where people feel they can actually speak up, where people feel they can become their best. And that's part of our drive for operational excellence. The first thing that we believe in operational excellence is that you need to be really good at your job. And if you're really good at your job and you work for a supervisor that's really helped you to develop, and if you work with a team that you actually like to work with, you create a sense of community, which is really important if you want to look after your own mental health. And lastly, we're looking for opportunities not just within Roy Hill, for people to develop and move within the company, but also in the broader Hancock Group, but also with our operating partners. And that's been very successful up to date. Reward and recognition is really important. We are really fortunate to have Mrs. Reinhardt as our executive chairman. And from the early days on, she's actually supported the program where we share the profits that goes back to her directly with the employees. It's called our Chairman's Profit Share Scheme. Now, to put it in perspective, this year, if you're a truck driver or process plant operator in Roy Hill, your bonuses over the year will be 50% of your base salary. I don't think there's any other mining company that shares that amount of profit with its employees. And that's directly attributed to our chairman. We listened to our employees. One of the key things was how can we actually improve our camp facilities and also the food quality. We're fortunate in the broader Hancock Group, we've got 2GR, we've got Bannister Downs, we've got Kidman, all great producers. So we worked with those companies to actually bring some better quality of food into our camps. We actually bring some better vegan options into our, and vegetarian options and healthy options, giving people an experience that feels more like sitting in a restaurant than being in a mine camp. And unashamedly, we want to be known as the Hilton of the Pilbara. We're looking at our facilities, listening to our employees, and we're significantly expanding the options we've got on site, investing in gyms, both male and female, as well as a lot of other recreational activities. And we're sharing also now with our contract partners. As I said, we've previously instituted a program where we share we reward shutdown contractors more if they repeatedly come to site. We're just about to also put a retention program in place with most of our contract partners. Just very quickly on this slide, RTS. If you think about it, your next employee is probably going to be Gen Z. 20% of Australia's population, 30% of the world population, over 2 billion people. Gen Z believe that they're going to, or the research showed that they're going to have probably 18 jobs over 6 careers. For them, the experience is really important. So we need to start to think, what are we going to do to attract them? What we've done in the past to attract people to go and study mining engineering won't work in the future. This generation are looking for something different. They're looking to be part of something bigger. So in Royal, we actually, again, through the Mrs. Reinhardt's sponsorship, doing a lot to do with supporting breast cancer research. Pilbara Faces, trying to identify in Aboriginal communities rare diseases very early on. This gives a lot of our employees a sense of being, a sense of that they're actually part of something a lot bigger, which is really important for your Gen Z. So I highly encourage you to start to think about how you're going to attract this generation to work for you. Lastly, we can solve the employment issue. We can manage to deal with COVID. But if we don't see a cultural change in the regulatory environment, we're not going to be able to deliver on all of these projects. The amount of duplicate regulations we all have to go through, duplicate approvals we have to go through, working with multiple government agencies to actually get the same approval slows things down. It was really great to see the Western Australian government announcing they're going to spend $120 million on their systems and processes, because as me, I assume a lot of you have gone through submitting a proposal, having to make a small amendment and have to restart from scratch. That slows approvals down. And the compounding impact of that, not just on the company, but also on the state and the broader Australia, because that's revenue and taxes that gets delayed. It's revenue and taxes that could have been used to build school, to employ doctors, employ nurses. That being delayed means that actually can't happen. Another thing we do need to remember is that through COVID, we've built up a massive amount of debt. So what are we going to do to pay that debt back? We need to grow the economy, and to grow the economy, we, and as an industry, need to work a lot closer with government around how do we streamline our processes. We see this as one of the biggest challenges over the next 12 to 24 months, especially in WA. How are we going to work with government to actually remove some of these unnecessary approvals and focus on the things that make a real difference? So lastly, and this is my last slide, hopefully by November, Queensland won't have COVID and we'll be able to travel there. So I do want to invite all of you that's part of the resources sector, to join us for International Mining Day on November the 22nd in the Watson Sundays in Queensland. If you want to join us, there's the link. It's going to be a celebration of everything that's great, not just in the mining sector, but also all the sectors that support us and that we support. It's an industry we're all very proud of. It's an industry that's been very good to all of us. So let's get together, let's celebrate it. If you can't join us physically there, there'll be virtual events as well. Make sure you tune in. On that, thank you very much, and make sure you feel very proud of this broader industry you're part of. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gerhard, for addressing a lot of very important issues that we're all interested in today. That was a fabulous rundown. We're going to have to move on right now without questions because we're running behind time.